Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a different video than usual, which you can tell by the giant pile of knits that I have stacked up next to me. And that is, I'm going to be showing you everything that I knit in 2023. I've stacked everything by category and then also in chronological order. I thought that would be best because in the beginning of the year my knits are kind of all over the place and mostly accessories. So I figured this would be the best way to show you. The first garment that I knit this year, I don't have anymore, but it was really beautiful. It was the Augustine's #1, so I will insert a picture somewhere. And I knit this in some hand-dyed yarn, together with, I believe, a lace-weight baby alpaca and a mohair. So it was just a beautiful blend of different colors and textures. It was just kind of itchy, and I'm not sure if it was the mohair that was bothering me, or if it was the nylon from the hand-dyed yarn that I used. Probably a combination of both. But it was really lovely and yeah, sadly not in my possession anymore. And then in that same month I also finished the Sorbet Sweater by Vert and Rose. I have actually thought about knitting this one again. The mistake that I made with this sweater was that I once again added a kid mohair or a silk mohair, and it wasn't even used or required by the pattern. She knitted in Drops Nepal, and I had some Drops Nepal in my stash, but I also had kid silk or Drops kid silk in the off-white color. So I paired them together and thinking that would be a nice decision and create a nice fabric, but then in the end when I put it on after finishing it, I just could not handle the itch. But I do really love this pattern and I really love the fit of it. I think if I were to knit it again I would do a folded neckline, just because the weight of the sweater was kind of bringing it down a bit, and I don't really like when the ribbing sits on my body. It needs to be like on my neck, if that makes sense. So those are the two sweaters that I don't have anymore, and that also happened to be the first two that I knit. And then here are all the ones that I do still have. So the one that came after that was the Sorbet Sweater by Kutovakika. This is a more chunky sweater. I believe it's knit on like, I don't even know, 6mm needles maybe. I knit this in Inca from Linde garn, held together with Gazzal Alpaca Dreamline Surrey, which I think that yarn has been discontinued, but I'm not entirely sure. They are quite a different color, so it has a little bit of a mauve look, if you really look closely. This is a very cute sweater, but for me it's something that I wear more so at home. It feels a little bit more of a lacy sweater for some reason. Then on the sleeves I did a regular bind off, which I'm not happy with because it just doesn't stretch at all. So that's something that I don't really like, but it's also one of my first sweaters of the year. So it makes sense that it's like that. But overall I do think it's a very nice sweater and it's super duper comfortable and very warm because it's so chunky. And I've worn it quite a bit and it barely has any pilling, which I find very interesting because the Inca from Linde garn is kind of like a blown fiber yarn, kind of similar to Drops Air or sandnes garn, Viking garn, bris or alpaca bris, I believe it's how it's called. So I think that's very interesting. The next garment that I have is the cardigan #6 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This is one of my favorite knits, but I call this my fancy knit for some reason. It's just because it's so light and airy and lacy that I wear this more so when I have a nice occasion to wear. So when I go out for dinner or a festivities, holiday, that kind of stuff. So maybe I will wear this with New Year's, I'm not sure. I think this sweater also has grown a lot. I'm pretty sure I usually knit the smallest size or whichever size is for a 80cm bust because that's what I have. Some patterns are really size inclusive, so the smallest size is more so for a 70cm bust. So then I will knit the next size. So sometimes that is a small, sometimes that is an extra small, kind of depends. But this one has grown a lot. I knit this in Long Yarns Regina, held together with 2 strands of mohair from a mohair cone that I get from a Dutch website that I will definitely link down below because I have more in my stash and they're pretty good. So funnily enough, this doesn't itch me at all. I can wear this on my bare skin and it's completely fine. And the mohair from this brand doesn't have any silk in it. So I think, like I said, that is the difference here. that makes it that I can wear it. I really love just the overall lace and everything of this pattern. The pattern calls, I remember, for 3 strands of lace weight, so 3 strands of mohair. But I kind of then supplemented that for the long yarns Regina, so it has a little bit more weight and integrity, which I really like. The next little garment that I have is a very special one, but also one that I haven't really worn a lot. I don't think I've worn it once actually, which is quite a shame, but I do think it's very cute. And it's the Pool Mimi by MCL Tricot Design. It is a pattern that you can make with short sleeves or with long sleeves, so that's why it's still called a pool, which is French for sweater. I knit this in hand-dyed yarn that I dyed myself, which is why I think it's a really special project. This is a organic merino DK weight yarn, and I just had a lot of fun dyeing it, which I think you can see because it basically has almost every single color of the rainbow in there. I did make a few modifications, I believe. I think maybe I did more or less decreases, I'm not entirely sure, but it does have a little bit of a funny shape just around the bust area. Kind of looks like maybe I added bust darts, which I don't need because I don't really have much of a bust. So that's a little bit of a fill. And the reason I don't wear this a lot is because it's a wool short sleeve top. And just for my climate in the Netherlands, or how my body runs, generally cold, it just doesn't really function very well. And also I don't really have a plain cardigan, like a white cardigan. All my cardigans are colored. But maybe if I had a white cardigan that's super simple, then I would wear this. And I could wear it over, but then it also kind of ruins the ruffle, you know? But I really love this top, and it's knit on 5mm needles, so it goes quite nice and fast. And the lace frill, you know, that's just really cute. The next sweater pattern is another one from Vert and Rose Knitwear. This is the Juzia sweater, and I was eyeing this up so much. Like when she was still knitting her sample, I was thinking like that I would really want to knit that pattern. So this was something that I didn't feel like waiting on, so this was my first ever test knit that I did. And it's a beautiful, just very simple raglan design with eyelet detail and a short ribbing. And usually I prefer a long ribbing, but this was during the summer that I knit this, so I think that's why I was more drawn to this. I also feel just the shape and the color is very summery. I knit this in Gazzal Alpaca Air, which is like a brushed alpaca yarn, quite similar I would say to sandnes garn brushed or borsted alpaca or drops melody, but then a little bit lighter weight in the white color, like I said. And then the color or the mauve that you see is from a hand-dyed suri that I dyed myself. And I still have some here, so you can see how it looked originally. And then the fabric that it created when I held it together with some white yarn. And like I said, this is one of my favorite sweaters and one that I've also worn a lot. Also, does not really have a lot of pilling. Like if you just look at the sleeves, you know, of course the fabric gets a little bit more fuzzy, but really there isn't any pilling. And as you can see also, it just has the most beautiful flared sleeve with a lace pattern, which was quite fun and easy to knit. And it's nice that you have something to look forward to, because all of the rest of the sweater is just stockinette. So you can just see like this with a flared sleeve. That is really cute. So I love this pattern and I would definitely knit it again. The only thing that I don't love about this sweater, I mean every pattern has something that is a little bit less. And for this one, it's the fit of the raglan. It does not fit me the best, I would say. But nonetheless, I really like it. Then the one following that is the Vilma top by Gregoria Fibers. I knit this in filcolana Peruvian highland wool in a lilac color. This is knit on 4mm needles, and I've mentioned this one quite a lot in my podcast, saying that I don't love the yarn, that I don't love the knitting process of it, and all of those things still apply. This was also a pattern that I just massively struggled with getting the right gauge. And I was getting, I believe it's called rowing out, where the tension between your knits and purls is different, so it's causing like weird bumps and lumps to form. And I think in some places you can actually still see that a bit. It's also because it's entirely knit flat, so then you have that risk. But honestly, with other patterns that I knit flat, I don't have that issue. So it could also be my inexperience from the summer or just the yarn. I'm not sure. It has twisted rib details everywhere, which was a pain to knit because they are all flat. So you have to purl through the back loop, which I definitely hate. Obviously some really nice lace details, which is what makes it very cute. I for sure knit this one in the smallest size and it turned out quite big. Maybe also my gauge or something, but just overall I do not love really the fit because it kind of goes past my shoulder. It's very much oversized and then it creates a weird shape around my armhole or my armpit, I would say. So for that, it's not my favorite knit, but I do like it and I do still wear it because it's really nice paired with like a turtleneck underneath or a thin sweater. And I also love these little buttons that I chose. They're like the most simple tortoiseshell buttons ever, but nonetheless very cute. This is my second test knit of the year and then also the last one because I think this one was a little bit intense. It's the Knit Knot Blouse by Macimille, which is a French pattern designer. And I really love this pattern because it taught me a lot. I think this has a contiguous shoulder, which is how you call it, where you cast on from the back. Then you do short rows, then you do the same for the front, and then you will pick up for the sleeve and then also do short rows. And then continue it like it's a raglan. So it does have some very beautiful shaping details, and because it was my first time doing this, yeah, like I said, it taught me a lot. It's knit in sandnes garn Sunday, which is a fingering weight yarn. So you guessed it, it's knit on 3mm needles, I believe. It does create a very beautiful and lightweight fabric, which is really nice because I knit this in the summer. So it's more of a summery top. That's also why it hasn't really gotten a lot of wear, just like my other summer top or like short sleeve top. But it does have a lot of very cute details and I chose to do it with the button because it's called the Knit Knot Blouse. The other version is with, well, you guessed it, with little bows or knots in the front. And it has a little frill on the bottom. It's a very cute pattern. I definitely would not knit it again just because I simply don't think it's worth the time and trouble of knitting a fingering weight summer top in wool yarn. Then the yarn Sandnes Garn Sunday is also not one of my favorites. I found it to be very splitty, and just even though this one has been, well, steam blocked, I still see a lot of imperfections, so I do not love that. But maybe if you hold it together with a mohair then it's better. I'm not sure, but if you just look closely at the fabric, it's just not. The next one is one of my favorites and it's another pattern from Kutovakika and it's the Stripe Hype Sweater. I think it's mostly one of my favorites because of all the yarns that I chose. I spent a lot of time also choosing the yarn, so I was playing around with all of the balls of hand-dyed yarn that I had and just moving them around a lot. But honestly it's quite difficult. I think you really have to make a good swatch to be able to see, but if you've been here before, you know that swatching is not really my thing. So honestly, for most of these patterns, I have not swatched. I just knit them. Only I think for the test knits is that I swatched. So that's something to keep in mind. But this is knit on 4mm needles because it's a DK weight pattern. It's mostly knit in drops Lima, which is the cream yarn that you are seeing. Then all the other yarns are either hand dyed or just what I had in my collection. Sandnes garn Tynn Peer Gynt held with a mohair. This is leftover from the Pool Mimi top, also with mohair. So all of the stripes I held with mohair, to be clear. Then this was also hand dyed yarn. That's actually the brown one over there. Same goes for this stripe, and then this is the leftover Sandnes garn Sunday from this top actually. As you can see. But then I held a mohair also there. This was definitely one of the easiest patterns out of all of the ones that I've knit. I would definitely recommend this or suggest this to beginners because it does not really have short rows or very much shoulder shaping. It's just, as you can see, a rectangle or square shape. And the same really goes for the sleeves. I do believe there are decreases in the sleeves. I think I just chose to not do any, if I can tell. I really like the drops Lima also, and for me it's comfortable enough to wear just on my skin. Then the next few sweaters all happen to be my own pattern, so I'm really sorry about that. Also because none of them are released and I'm still busy writing up all of the patterns for them. But I do have to say that next year they will all be released for sure. Because I'm working very hard to get the patterns ready and then start doing the tester call or test knitting. I really hope that I will be able to find enough testers. And obviously I have to do it not all at once, because then there's less chance, I think, for me to find enough testers. The first one that I finished is the Tallulah texture cardigan, is how I call it. And it's just a beautiful all over texture cardigan, as the name suggests. And this one is the biggest headache to grade because of all of the different stitch counts and patterns, but it is one of my favorites. The only thing that I would change is the yarn, because I knit this in Drops Charisma on 4mm needles, and the Drops Charisma is a 100% wool superwash yarn. And I thought I didn't really mind the superwash, like the feel and everything is fine, although it is a little bit squeaky. But the thing that I don't like about it is actually that I can really notice that it's not very warm. And I think it's because of the superwash. Compared to my other more like woolly sweaters, this just doesn't like give heat at all. And I think that's a shame also because of, you know, how much time I probably spent knitting this all over texture thing and figuring out all of the stitch counts and whatnot. But it's very beautiful, and this one has a drop shoulder design that's on the back and beautiful big puffy sleeves with eyelets and then just a little pearl texture, 2x2 ribbing. Super lovely. And then one of my favorite things is actually the buttons, because they are like ambered color and they kind of look like a sun but more orangey. And I just think it pairs really well with this design and it makes me love it even more. Maybe if I do a tester call for this, I will knit another sample. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think I would mind having another one of this. I could also just knit it completely without all of the textures and just have a really nice plain cardigan. Because the fit is quite nice, if I'm honest. Then the next sweater that I have is the Bloom Bubble sweater. This sweater kind of went all over the place because I didn't have enough yarn. I intended this design to have a puffy sleeve, which it definitely has not. It just has a regular decreased sleeve, but I do really love it. And the yarn is so freakishly soft. I think this is my softest and most comfortable and cozy sweater. And funnily enough, it doesn't even pill. Like if you just look at it, there's like no pilling, which is crazy. Because this yarn is also similar to Drops Air. And I believe Drops Air does spill quite a bit, but this is just beautiful and soft. It's the Garn Cloud. And it's a Norwegian yarn, so I got it from a Norwegian website. But they just ship internationally, which is quite expensive, the shipping. But it's worth it. I'm actually thinking now that I'm filling this, that maybe I should get that yarn again, because it's so soft. It's like crazy soft. But more about the pattern, I would say. I did a really cute folded neckline with a picot edge. Then here on the front, this is probably the main thing, is that it has a cable that then moves to the front where it comes together in a lace and bubbled pattern. I intended to do some embroidery here, but months later now I still haven't done that, so I think it's going to just like stay plain. Then the same bubble and lace pattern I did on the sleeve, just all the way through the bottom. And then here I just did plain stockinette. And then I also did a folded hem with a picot edge on the hem of the sleeves. And then the back also has that drop shoulder design and then a pearl and knit stitch pattern. And then the hem on the bottom is a twisted rib. So it has a little bit of everything, I would say. And it's just a super cozy and cute sweater. I also held the yarn with a thread of Mayflower Elba, which is a Gazzal Alpaca yarn, which is also super soft. So maybe that also contributed to the softness of this sweater. But this is definitely one of the best yarn combinations out of everything that I've knit. Then the final pattern that I finished is one that you actually have never seen before. Because I finished this very recently and I haven't filmed a podcast since, because I did Craftmas or Vlogmas. So this is the first debut, and it's the Vivian Vintage Cardigan. And this is going to be my first pattern of 2024. I'm already busy writing up the pattern for this. I'm currently still on figuring out the short rows, because this one has short row shaping. I inspired the fit off of the Macimille blouse, so I did cast on the back, did some short rows, did the same for the front. Then pick up the sleeves, did short rows, and then at the same time added that little puff. And then continued like it's a raglan down there. It has a really traditional stitch pattern on the front and combined with some twisted stitches. Then I did my first double knit bottom band actually, so quite ambitious to do that without a pattern and just on my own design. But I did that. Then this is just 1x1 rib that is folded. And I love a folded collar on a cardigan. Just something about that just makes me very happy. It's so like cozy and cottage feeling. Then the sleeves are beautiful, gorgeous puffy sleeves with also a pearl knit stitch pattern. It's a vintage kind of pattern. I think that's also why I called this the Vivian Vintage Cardigan, because to me it feels very vintage. A lot of vintage cardigan patterns have a puffy sleeve, but then they're 99% out of the time I would say they're knit flat, and then you have to seam them and then you create that puff. And I wanted to take inspiration from that, but then have it in a nicer construction or a more modern construction in that sense. The sleeves then all like puff together in some 1x1 rib with a, I think, tubular or Italian bind off, either one of those, just a sewn bind off in pattern. And then also a 1x1 rib on the bottom with a regular bind off, because I do kind of love the regular bind off in this cardigan. Because it's vintage inspired, this then to me gives a very much vintage feeling. And then I chose some big tortoiseshell buttons. And there you have it. It's knit in Drops Nepal, and it's a very lovely yarn so far. I do have noticed, sadly, some pilling. And I've worn this once, and then after that day I was, you know, de-pilling myself, because there were like big fuzzy pills on there, which you cannot see anymore because I've removed them. And also maybe you can see here on the sleeve, it kind of has less stitch definition here because of the rubbing of my arm or something. So definitely not the best yarn, but it is very soft and I do think it's very comfortable to wear. It's knit on 5mm needles, so it goes quite quickly. So this is an Aran weight pattern, and it's one of my favorites. So we're ending on a really good note, I would say. Then I also made one bag this year, and this is a vintage pattern, so I'm not sure what it's called, but I will link it below. I got it on Etsy. I hope it's still available. But it's pretty simple, I would say. I don't think you need a pattern for it. It's just a big granny square with another behind it, then seamed all together with a frilly or fringe edge. Then here just goes, it's kind of like a bucket bag, but it's a little bit rough to open and close. And then it has a picot edge here that is very cute. And this is made with very chunky yarn. It's Drop Snow. And I think for this purpose I really like it. I definitely would never make a garment out of this. And then this is just a chain, like a crochet chain that is then the string. Then with some tassels. I think this is not in a pattern, I just added them myself. And then you just like cinch it in like that. And I really like this bag. I mostly wear this in the winter. I also have never added the lining to it, which is probably something that I should do. Because now it's kind of open, but luckily I've never had something that fell out of it or anything. And that's the only bag that I made this year. Next we can get into the winter accessories, and then that's basically all. I don't think I will even mention the gifts that I've knit, because I don't have them here anyway, so I don't really see why I would talk about them. The first little accessory or winter accessory that I made this in February, and it's a bubble head wrap inspired by, I would say, like the 50s and the 60s. This is such a cute little pattern, but it's a really big shame that I've never worn this out. Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit it because it's very cute. But like I said then in the podcast, that I feel self-conscious wearing it. I still kind of do. It's just the truth. But the yarn is super lovely because it's a Turkish yarn from Gazzal. It's called Alpaca Air, I believe. And the fabric that it creates is really lovely. Then it's knit with a super small gauge or tight gauge, like a 3mm needle, I believe, and then bubbles all over. Just like look at all of those bubbles. I love it. And then some seed stitch everywhere, also here at the strings. I think a modern pattern would do I-cord and then a slip stitch edge. So I love that the vintage pattern like this does it a bit differently. But it's so cute, but I never wear it, but you can see how it would look. It's kind of like a bonnet or a balaclava, but a bit different. So that was my first winter accessory of the year. The one that followed, I believe, was this one, the crochet hat. I knit this or crocheted this in April. Did not use any pattern, and I basically copied a Another Stories hat that I saw online. And I think it turned out quite nice. I did my first crochet circle, which I don't even remember how I did this, to be honest. Then all of the squares just have more stitches on the bottom than on the top, which just creates this like shape that it fits your head. I made this in a mix of cotton yarns. The flower, or the entire flower, is made with a cotton and acrylic type of yarn, which I really do not like. I very strongly dislike this yarn, and I would never use it again. I believe it's Cocha Alabama. Don't like it. But the mauve or the coral color, in contrary, is really nice. And I believe it's Cotton in Love by Cocha Concept. And it's superb, I would say. I have not worn this a ton, but in the summer if I need a hat, then it's really nice. And I'm happy to have it. The next pattern is the Manhattan Hat by Tori NYC or Tori Knits. I knit this in long lana grossa or long yarns, either one of those. I will put it on the screen. Setasuri pink. And that's also the thing that I don't like about this hat, is that the yarn is super light and fluffy, which looks cute, but it just creates a very flimsy hat, as you can tell. And this is the Manhattan Hat bulky edition, so I feel like it needed also maybe a more bulky yarn. And yeah, the shaping that I did does not look the best, probably also due to the yarn or just my own skills, maybe. Could be both. And then the brim is quite short because I didn't have a lot of yarn, and I think I also prefer just a larger brim. So it's not the best. I don't really wear this one very often because it's very light and flimsy, so it doesn't protect my ears enough for the cold. So honestly, when I say all of these things, it's kind of useless, but I'm keeping it for now. I knit this in October, but it feels very recent. This is the Edge of Twilight Hat by Drops Design, so it's a free pattern. I think this is very similar to the construction of the Oslo hat by Petite Knit, or the Musselburgh hat, which I don't know who designed it, but I just know that the Musselburgh hat has a similar construction. It's just a double folded hat. So right now, when I unfold this, it's just 2 layers, and then fold it inwards again, then over your ears this is 4 layers. So here you can see the inside, it's basically the same, but I made this little thing to hold it together so it doesn't go inside out or the other way, whatever. I knit this in Drops Air in a mauve color. The yarn is holding up very nicely. Then I knit this on 4mm needles instead of 4.5mm needles, which is what the pattern calls for. And I think this is my favorite hat because it's very warm. So for that I really like it. Also really like the color. It just goes with everything. It's probably my most worn accessory. If I were to make it again, I would probably size down a little bit. I think it has just grown quite a bit. So it could be tighter over my ears to just protect me some more. But all in all, it's not a fail at all. And it's a great pattern and free. So you don't have anything to lose. Then I have one more hat and then only the scarves left. This is a pattern that you have never seen and it's also unnamed as of now. Because it's my own little pattern and I'm not sure. I think I'm going to call it the Hermione Hat from Harry Potter. But I'm not entirely sure yet. Because usually, like with my other patterns, I will name them. Or I will have the design element in the name. So Tallulah texture cardigan, lana lacy skirt. And with this one I couldn't really find a name that I liked. Also because then the first name, I always choose a name of something that I am then watching at the time. So Tallulah was from... oh yeah. The Tallulah, the name was from the Firefly Lane series. Then the Vivian vintage cardigan was from Sex Education. And then this one, Hermione, because we recently watched Harry Potter. But anyways, that was a big distraction. But it's this hat that is all over textured and bubbly and cabley. So this is my own pattern that I'm working on, and this is the first sample. So it has some flaws in the sense that this stitch, for example, is next to the main design. And then here there are more purl stitches in between than here. So that's just a stupid little mistake that I made that I'm going to have to fix. Then I'm just still figuring out all of the sizes because I do want to offer it in probably 3 to 5 different sizes. Then I did a 1x1 rib brim with a tubular cast on, and then I did some like weird thing. Or first I knit everything and then I did a German short row. Because I thought that this would look really nice when you then fold it to the inside, because then here it has some stockinette. And also then the ribbing lays just super flat, because why would you bother yourself or torture yourself with doing so much ribbing when you're gonna fold it up anyways? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. I knit this in 2 strands of Drops Flora held together with a mohair from a cone that I still have behind here. And the fabric is great and I love this hat. And yeah, I'm proud that I made this. It was a brain exercise for sure, but the result is great. So you will see this more maybe in my next podcast, I'm not entirely sure. I hope to have another sample by then. Then the last thing that I knit was also the Grandmacore hood by Kutovakika in a DK weight merino held together with thin silk mohair by sandnes garn in a lovely purple color. And I really love this thing, but I have gifted it since then because my cousin really liked it, so I figured I would give it to her for Christmas. But I definitely want to knit it again, probably in a cream color then. But now we can get into the scarves. So the first scarf that I knit, or if it even counts as a scarf because it's teeny tiny, it's the Sophie Scarf by Petite knit. And I made this with the leftovers of this yarn, so it's kind of like a little set. And for the scarf I definitely really like it, and it's just like super small. If I wrap it around my neck, I'm already wearing something, but you can see that it's very small, but that's also what makes it very cute. And I do wear this quite a bit, just when I want like an extra layer around my neck. Just stay nice and cozy, and it's a very cute detail and a nice pop of color. But it's the scarf number 2 by My Favorite Things Knitwear that I knit in some hand-dyed yarn that I treated myself to by Life in the Long Grass. It's a merino DK. I think I knit this on 3.5 millimeters. It's kind of like a beige yarn, but it has some beautiful yellow details and specks. And I really like this. The pattern has different stitch definitions or textures, and then it alternates. And I also love the shape and the size of this. I wear this one exactly the same as I wear now. It's kind of an in-between size, but that's also what I love about it. It's in the color Noon. That's how much I remember. So Life in the Long Grass, merino in the color Noon. I think they still sell this colorway. And then the final scarf that I knit this year is the Press Flower Shawl by Savory Knitting. This was a big project for me because I'm not a big shawl or scarf knitter, I would say. So this was quite a big project. And it's also, well, reasonably sized, I would say. I knit this in Wolmetverve hand-dyed yarn. It's their basic sock, which is the yellow color that you are seeing. Then I held that together with Mayflower Alba in a beige color, because the hand-dyed yarn was a fingering weight and the pattern calls for DK weight. And then all of the flowers is Neighborhood Fiber Co. in a color Butcher's Heel held together with Long Yarns Alpaca Super Light in a bright like neon coral type of color. And this is mosaic knitting, so it was a lot of fun to knit. Just at the end I was bored with it, so I skipped the border. but it's a big enough size for me. And I just wear it like this. I wrap it around and then I will tie it, or even like wear it like an actual scarf like this. And it works perfectly well for that because I don't really have any scarves in my possession. And it does really add something interesting to my outfit because of the flowers and all of the colors. So it's definitely one of my favorite knits, and the fabric is super light and soft, 4mm needles. It's a super great pattern. And yeah, I think this is a great point to end this video. I really hope you enjoyed seeing everything that I knit in 2023. And I think it's also super fun that I kind of brought you along this entire year, because I started doing these knitting podcasts in February. So I think that's really fun. So if you have been here since then I just want to say thank you, because that's really amazing that, yeah, you have really followed along. I think it's a really special thing, and I'm really looking forward to doing my next knitting podcast. I think it has been a month or something, but it felt like ages. And also in the new year, I'm going to do one every other week. So I'm gonna do one on the first Friday of the month and then on the third Friday of the month, just to have some, regularity and a little bit of a schedule. It will also motivate me a little bit. And then I also obviously hope to really, release some patterns next year, because that would be amazing, and it's a really big goal of mine to finally get them out in the world and to see your makes. I hope to see you in my next video, and ahead of time I also wish you a happy new year and happy holidays, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!